NFL mandatory minicamp has just wrapped. We are about 4 weeks away from the start of training camp. And this is sort of, the 4 to 5 week sort of dead period in the National Football League. So I thought I would take some time today. Of course, the NBA Finals just ended. We just did our top 10 NBA players after the NBA Finals concluded. Of course, now we have, there is some baseball obviously going on. The WNBA is going on. I already mentioned, on yesterday's show, the UFL, their inaugural championship just wrapped up. So this is the time of year where there's not a lot of games going on every day in sports, and we sort of start talking about obviously what ifs when it comes to the National Football League season. And I did my early NFL predictions on Memorial Day. I know you guys heard that. And of course, as I talked about with the New York Jets last week when it came to Aaron Rodgers and Hassan Reddick being out of training camp, I can make amendments to those predictions. My official predictions will come out Labor Day weekend. Now, before Labor Day weekend, not only are we going to be doing a list of the top 10 NFL head coaches on the hot seat, that'll come out probably sometime in mid to late July on the podcast. But today, I want to do another top 10 list. I want to do a list of just teams, all 32 teams in the NFL. I'm going to take the top 10 NFL teams this year under pressure to win. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean win a Super Bowl. I'm talking about, are you an above 500 team? Are you a playoff team? Did you win your division? And there are underlying circumstances around different of these teams. Maybe it's a quarterback is on the hot seat. He just got paid. Can he win more games than what he has done in the past? Is it a team who, if this quarterback does not work out, is he sort of on the last chance of his deal? Is he on a prove-it deal? If it doesn't work out, are we in a complete disaster? Is that coach on its hot seat? Could changes be happening? What's your division like? What's your conference like? So all those things factor in. Your free agency moves, your draft, everything factors in here. And again, some of these circumstances are not the same. Some of these teams are Super Bowl contenders. Some of these teams are playoff contenders. But these are my top 10 NFL teams that are under pressure to win in 2024. We're going to go from 10 to 1. And starting at number 10, we have Mike Tomlin, who just signed a recent contract extension in the Pittsburgh Steelers. The reason why I say the Steelers are under pressure to win, even though Mike Tomlin did just sign that contract extension, is for a couple of reasons. Number one, and I said this when me and my debate partner over championship rings, Josh Unger, was discussing this contract extension as well as the Kevin Stefanski contract extension in Cleveland last week on championship rings. Contract extensions to me don't mean much. How many times have we seen guys sign a contract extension and they are fired the next year? And the Rooneys and the Steelers have already came out and said they're starting to get impatient. They haven't won, I don't believe, a playoff game since the 2016 season. Their last couple of playoff wins have been against, Matt Moore and the Dolphins, Alex Smith and the Kansas City Chiefs, when they basically kicked field goals to win that game. They just got rid of their franchise quarterback. At least they thought it was in Kenny Pickett. They traded away Deontay Johnson to Carolina. Now it is, I believe, will be the Russell Wilson show this year. Of course, they do have Justin Fields. Though, as I have been saying, I don't think they want Justin Fields on the field because they'd rather give up a 6th-round pick to Chicago than a 4th-round pick. But you are in a tough division. Cleveland and Deshaun Watson, we don't know what they're going to be. Obviously, we expect Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson to be healthy for Cincinnati and Baltimore, but this is a cornerstone franchise who has just sort of felt, in inability to adapt to the modern times. They're still bread fast on defense and running the football, and they haven't had a great offensive line. Now, that could change this year. They've got a couple of draft picks. They drafted a couple receivers who they think could complement George Pickens. You've got Pat Freiermuth at tight end. But when you make this investment now where you essentially have two quarterbacks in Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, you got to win games. The Pittsburgh fan base is getting antsy, even though they love Mike Tomlin. 8, 9 years is a long time away for this franchise to win a playoff game, and it's been a while since this team has won the division as well. Of course, it's been since 2020 when they got clobbered by Baker Mayfield and the Browns in the wild card round. So even though the Steelers have 6 Lombardi trophies, this fan base is starving for more playoff success. That's why they're under pressure. And I also believe that if they do go under 500 this year, because the schedule is so difficult in the back half for Pittsburgh, don't be surprised that Mike Tomlin is in the Fox booth, because I listen to guys like Colin Cowherd on a daily basis, who of course hosts a daily radio show at Fox, and he has been adamant that Fox would offer Mike Tomlin a contract if he was to leave the Pittsburgh Steelers. Number 9, I got the Browns. Now, I just talked about Kevin Stefanski and general manager Andrew Berry just recently signed contract extensions. And while that is true, the Browns, I don't have a very good feeling about them this year. We don't know how Nick Chubb is going to be coming off that brutal knee injury. The Browns are hoping that Jerry Jeudy becomes the number 2 complement to Amari Cooper. Their offensive line is good, but of course, the likes of Joe Bitonio and Wyatt Teller, who just recently also signed another extension, is getting older. The defense was historic last year at home under first-year defensive coordinator, at least in Cleveland, that being Jim Schwartz. They were not very good on the road. They got tortured by C.J. Stroud and the Houston Texans in that playoff game. So I think the defense needs a bounce back year, specifically in the secondary, and Myles Garrett needs to show up not just in the first half, but in the back half as well. But we all know the pressure here for the Browns is on Deshaun Watson, because again, I don't give a rip if Kevin Stefanski went on that miracle run at the end of last year with Joe Flacco. I don't give a rip if he and Andrew Berry just signed contract extensions. The Browns are now in year 3 of the Deshaun Watson experiment. Obviously, the first year he gets suspended, 11 games, comes back. The last 6 does not look great. Year 2 starts off the year a little shaky, gets hurt. There's a lot of controversy around how hurt he is. May come back early, comes back against Indianapolis, gets hurt, comes back against Baltimore, wins that game, and then he's out for the season. So you're in year 3 of the Deshaun Watson experiment. We know how Cleveland fans feel about their potential first-round quarterback, and with the amount of draft capital you gave up to get the former Clemson and the former national champion quarterback, the Browns need to win games this year. And again, I'm not sure they're going to be able to do it with the competition that's in their division, but there's certainly pressure among the local fan base where I'm at in Cleveland, as well as the Browns internally. They think they're better than what I think they're going to be. Now, number 8 is Atlanta. And this is not just based on Michael Penix. I would have put Atlanta in my top 10 NFL teams under pressure to win, even if they did not go Michael Penix. Because you went out and you said, okay, Desmond Ridder, he's obviously not the answer. Arthur Smith did not know how to use Drake London. He did not know how to use Kyle Pitts. He did not know how to use Bijan Robinson, even though we have a very good offensive line. Atlanta said we need an upgraded coach. We got Raheem Morris. We need an upgraded OC. We got Zach Robinson. He's from the Sean McVay, Kevin O'Connell tree. Oh, where was Kirk Cousins last? Kevin O'Connell. We are in a dome. Carolina, I like Dave Canales, and I think he can do some good things with Bryce Young. They're still rebuilding. The Saints are a mess, and we don't know if Baker Mayfield, sin Dave Canales, is going to be as good as with Dave Canales last year in Tampa. So there's pressure to me in Atlanta. Again, it's not as much as some of the other teams on this list, but there is pressure on Atlanta, regardless of who's playing quarterback. You got the weapons. You got a very good defense led by Calais Campbell and Jesse Bates. Now, your defensive coordinator did leave to go to Jacksonville, but I think Atlanta is expecting now, again, in that bad division, your upgraded quarterback. You won 7 games last year with Desmond Ridder. Can you get to 10 and win the division with Kirk Cousins or Michael Penix even? And that's why there's some pressure on Atlanta. It will be viewed as somewhat of a failure if they don't at least make the playoffs. Now, number 7 is Jacksonville. And the reason why I put the Jags here is because, listen, Trevor Lawrence just got paid. And when Doug Peterson came aboard, they obviously had a slow start. Doug was rebuilding the culture in Jacksonville after Urban Meyer was the biggest disaster this side of Freddie Kitchens and Hugh Jackson we've ever seen in the National Football League. And they obviously came back in that wild card game against the Chargers. They started off 8-3 last year, but they lost their final 6 games down the stretch. They finished under 500 at 8-9. They did not make the playoffs. And, who knows if Trevor Lawrence was hurt, whatever the case may be. Calvin Ridley is no longer there. He's in Tennessee now. It did not seem like that Trevor and him were on the same page. Maybe Lawrence will do better with Travis Etienne, with Christian Kirk, with Evan Ingram, with some of the weapons they drafted, and they can get him back on track. We talked about this defense a lot. They obviously, outside of Josh Allen, don't have a lot of premier pass rushers. The defense needs a complete rebuild, and this division has gotten a lot better. Tennessee has improved their weapons. I think Anthony Richardson and the Colts are going to be very good. And then we know what Houston did with their additions this offseason. But Jacksonville paid Trevor Lawrence, top 5, top 6 NFL quarterback money. They got to win games. They got to at least, I would say, win 9, 10-ish games and compete for a playoff spot, or this thing could unravel real fast here with Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence. And with Jacksonville just paying Trevor Lawrence big bucks, you bet your bottom dollar that Doug Peterson would be the first to go, even though I think he's done a decent job. Not as great as I think many people would suspect for Jacksonville in his first 2 years, which is why there's also more pressure on Lawrence and the Jags. Now, number 6 on the West is their division mate, the Houston Texans. And there is pressure on the Texans this year to win the division. I would say to at least win a playoff game and get back to the divisional round. Some people think that they are the favorites to go to the AFC Championship, and they would be the favorites. Some people think to challenge Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce to go for a three-peat. I still think the Bengals are in that conversation. Listen, I think the Chargers are going to be very good. You still got Josh Allen in Buffalo, Miami, the Jets, who we'll get to. Spoiler alert, they are way down on this list. So I don't know about that for Houston, but I do know that they upgraded their running back by replacing Joe Mixon with Devin Singletary. And I do know that they upgraded, obviously, a wide receiver. Tank Dell, who got hurt at the end of last year, was coming on. Nico Collins was a bright spot, turning into a number 1 wide receiver. But now he becomes your number 2, obviously with Dalton Schultz, but you add in Stephon Diggs. And with the trajectory CJ Stroud made as a rookie, if he regresses, or if there's a chance here that he does a really good season again, but Bobby Slowick, their genius offensive coordinator, becomes a head coach at the end of this season. And we know, I saw it in Philadelphia when it came with Nick Sirianni and Shane Steichen. Shane Steichen seemed to be the magic to get Jalen Hurts to an MVP level. Is Bobby Slowick more responsible for CJ Stroud's success than we all realize? That's why, to me, there's pressure on the Houston Texans. They come in at number 6. So here we go. We're getting into the top 5, and number 5 and number 4 could be interswitched. You could talk me into either one of these two teams being in these two spots. For me, I'm putting the Eagles at 5. And we know there's pressure on Nick Sirianni. We know he's on the hot seat. The team started off 10-1. They had one of the best, Super Bowl losers with a start of season in NFL history. And then for whatever reason, Sean Desai was not working out on the defensive end. Matt Patricia, Coach Pencil came in, made everything worse. And essentially the end of the Eagles season was a disaster, and they got embarrassed at the end of the season by Tampa Bay in the wild card round. Yet Nick Sirianni is back. Kellen Moore is the new offensive coordinator. Now, a lot of people are not high on Kellen Moore because Dallas's offense seemingly got better last year without Kellen Moore. But I still think Kellen Moore's a very smart play caller. I did not think he did a bad job with the Chargers. I just think he dealt with injuries. And even though you lost Jason Kelce in the offensive line, I still like Cam Urges a lot. He's going to slide from right guard to center. You got Saquon Barkley, who become the Eagles' three down back. I can't tell you the last time the Eagles had a legitimate three down back. Shady McCoy is the closest to it, I would say, about a decade ago. And I think that this Ellen Moore offense is going to help Jalen Hurts. We know they have the weapons. A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith both just got paid. You go on with Dallas Goedert at tight end. Defensively, they lost Fletcher Cox to retirement. So Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter is going to have to step up now in this Vic Fangio scheme. They paid Bryce off Hassan Reddick money. Can he become the new Hassan Reddick for Philadelphia? And then we know with the additions of Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean in the secondary, to go with a Darius Slay, a Reed Blankenship, a Avante Maddox, that this and Isaiah Rodgers, who's coming off the gambling suspension, that this Philadelphia secondary is going to be very good. But there is pressure on this team to win out of the gate, because if it goes south the way it did last year, Nick Sirianni will not stand another year. Now, number 4, I'm going to have Dallas. And I said Dallas and Philly could be interchangeable, 5-4, 4-5. The reason why I have Dallas a little bit, just a tiny bit more pressure, more than the Philadelphia Eagles to win this year, is because we know not only is Mike McCarthy is on the hot seat, but I think the real difference here is with Philadelphia, we know Jalen Hurts is locked into the franchise quarterback. Dak Prescott is reportedly looking for $60 million a year. Now, Dak is a good B2B plus quarterback. And at the way the market is growing, you can make the argument that that is about market value for Dak Prescott, but it just seemed asinine to me that you're paying a very good quarterback, great quarterback money. And Dallas got embarrassed last year by the Green Bay Packers in the first round of the postseason. Listen, they didn't do anything to upgrade their skill positions in the draft. CeeDee Lamb is still there, yes, but they did lose Tony Pollard to Tennessee. You know who they replaced him with? Ezekiel Elliott, the rundown Ezekiel Elliott, who Dallas decided that they needed to move on from a year ago. Their offensive line, is still good. I don't think it's as dominant as it once was. Trayvon Diggs is coming off the ACL injury, so he should be better in the secondary. But you have a new defensive coordinator now. You go from Dan Quinn, who is the new head coach of the Commanders, to Mike Zimmer, who had been out of the league the past couple of years ever since being fired from the Minnesota Vikings. Zimmer, I think, is a very good defensive coordinator. I don't think he's as good as Quinn. I don't think he's going to be as aggressive as Quinn as well, per se. So we'll see if that change is a positive or a negative for Dallas. But this pressure for Dallas is obviously all on Dak. And again, I'll say this. If something happens to CeeDee Lamb and he has to miss a significant amount of time, the Cowboys offense will not be the same. Now, you may think I have this team too high on the list, but at number 3, I have the Chicago Bears. Listen, you drafted Caleb Williams, number 1. Last year, you traded for DJ Moore. This year, you traded for Keenan Allen. You signed DeAndre Swift. You draft Roma Dunze. You already have Cole Kmet. That offense is absolutely loaded. It's a top 5 offense in terms of quarterback, running back, receivers, tight ends in the National Football League. Now, the concern here is if you're Chicago, you have a defensive coach in Matt Eberflus who is absolutely on the hot seat. There are some thoughts on there, including from yours truly. The Bears should have moved on from Matt Eberflus. They needed to get Caleb Williams an offensive coach. But there is a world out there where Caleb Williams is so good, he saves Matt Eberflus' job. And I'm not denying that Matt Eberflus is a good defensive coach. Ever since they made another trade, last year's trade deadline, they get Montez Sweat. The Bears were top 10 defense. They have Tremaine Edmonds. They have TJ Edwards, very good linebackers. Jalen Johnson, very good corner that signed a contract extension. So the Bears have some fundamental pieces there to work with. And even though they're in a division with Jordan Love, with Sam Darnold / JJ McCarthy, with Jared Goff and those Detroit Lions who are, potentially on a quest to get to the Super Bowl for the first time in franchise history this year. If the Bears go 7, 8 wins, which they did last year with Eberflus, it will be viewed as a failure, and Eberflus will not be back. There's a ton of pressure on the Chicago Bears here to at least make the playoffs because you can make an argument. The Bears went from, an okay skill position group to, again, top 5 in the National Football League. It's one of the biggest increases from quarterback, who, again, I thought Justin Fields, the numbers told you he was just okay. You watch Justin Fields and the Bears, he would get worse as games went on last season. To the upgrades in number 2 and number 3 receivers, to the upgraded offensive line, to the defense being well coached, there's absolutely pressure on Caleb Williams to come in and win right away for the Chicago Bears. What do I have to say about number 2? It's the San Francisco 49ers. And to me, there's nothing else to say. But as Chris Broussard says on First Things First, S. Bob, Super Bowl or bust. This is one of your last years that you are paying Brock Purdy a 7th-round salary. You have gotten to the Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo, could not break through against Kansas City. You got very close with Brock Purdy last year, but could not break through against Kansas City. You already drafted another wide receiver in the 1st round. You're not going to be able to keep Deebo Samuel, Brock Purdy, Brandon Ayuk, McCaffrey, who just got paid an extension. George Kittle had this great offensive line, had this great defensive line with the likes of Bosa and Hargrave, Ufunga at safety, Fred Warner at linebacker. Like, we know the Niners, they have Pro Bowlers at every position, arguably on the field. But we know you can't pay everybody. And we know this roster has been close. I mean, in my lifetime, they have made 3 Super Bowls that I have seen personally. They've lost all 3. They made 2 more NFC championship games in that time. So San Francisco has had a ton of success in the 2010/2020s. They just have not broken through. Last year sort of felt like their year. Can they do it again? That's a lot of games being played late into the year, year after year after year. Sometime it's going to catch up to the Niners. And again, before they start having to move off people, this year sort of feels like their last shot. And of course, the team that I believe is most under pressure to win this year at number 1, dare I say no more, Mr. Ayahuasca himself, Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets. Because if the Jets do not win the AFC East this year, they do not at least win a playoff game. If they do not, make it to the final 8, if you will, of the NFL season, I believe Aaron Rodgers' Jets tenure will be an absolute failure. Yes, the offensive line is still a question, but they did upgrade it in the offseason. They added Mike Williams at wide receiver, as I talked about. You get a healthy Brees Hall running back. We know that defense and Robert Saleh is going to lock down. But in a couple of years, you're going to have to pay a lot of those defensive guys. And with Tyrod Taylor being the backup to Aaron Rodgers, Tyrod Taylor is a nice veteran, but he is not a succession plan to Aaron Rodgers, as clearly the Zach Wilson experiment failed. Zach Wilson is now in Denver. So with that being said, I think the pressure is all on Aaron Rodgers, who brought on this media circus with him not being in mandatory minicamp this past week. All eyes are on the Jets, and especially because, listen, the New England Patriots and Drake May, we'll see how they do, but I suspect that they are in a rebuild. Buffalo, we know the pieces they lost on defense. We know the pieces they lost on offense. We know they're not going to be as explosive or as talented as they were a year ago. The Miami Dolphins are sort of in the same boat. And can the Dolphins get past their December and January demons with Mike McDaniel as a head coach, and can Tua play outdoors in the cold in December? These are all legit, valid questions. But at the end of the day, the pressure, I believe, as long as Aaron Rodgers is healthy, is all on the New York Jets, because Aaron chose to leave Green Bay to go to the Jets. The Jets didn't necessarily get rid of Aaron Rodgers. Now, they were close to kicking him out the door, but Aaron chose himself to leave and go to the Jets. He could go to any other franchise in the world. He could have went to his, team that he grew up rooting for in the San Francisco 49ers. He did not. He went to the New York Jets. He brought in Nathaniel Hackett as offensive coordinator. Jordan Love won a playoff game last year while Aaron Rodgers played 4 snaps and tore his ACL. Jordan Love has already done more for Green Bay this past season than Aaron did in his last 3 years there, arguably, which is, again, all of the pressure in the world, I believe, this year is on Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets. I'm not saying Super Bowl. Again, San Francisco, there's pressure on them to win a Super Bowl. Dallas, there's pressure on them to make the NFC Championship game for the first time in my lifetime. Pittsburgh, there's pressure on them, I think, to win the playoffs or to make the playoffs, I should say, and have a winning record. Houston, there's pressure on them to win a playoff game or two. For the Jets, it really is close to Super Bowl or bust. I would say at least making it to the divisional round. So to recap, my top 10 NFL teams under pressure to win during the 2024 NFL season. Number 10, Pittsburgh Steelers. Number 9, Cleveland Browns. Number 8, Atlanta Falcons. Number 7, Jacksonville Jaguars. Number 6, Houston Texans. Number 5, Philadelphia Eagles. Number 4, Dallas Cowboys. Number 3, Chicago Bears. Number 2, San Francisco 49ers. And number 1 team, New York Jets. Like that clip from the Brands World podcast? If so, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button. While you're down there hitting the subscribe button, make sure to also hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure you check out all the other clips from the Brands World podcast right here on YouTube.